Welcome back to my channel, LGBT Crime Files. If you've been here before, you already know, we don't just talk about true crime, we talk about the lives behind the headlines, especially when those lives belong to queer people. People whose stories are often forgotten, misrepresented, or never told at all. I started this channel because of a lifelong obsession with crime documentaries. I was fascinated by how investigators pieced together chaos into truth. But over time, my obsession turned into something more, an eye-opener. I started noticing a pattern. Some crimes made headlines for weeks. Others, especially when the victims were LGBTQ+, barely made the news at all. And now, here we are, in June, the month we celebrate Pride. A time to honor our history, our struggles, and the power of living authentically. But Pride isn't just parades and parties, it's also about remembering those we've lost. Those who never got to live fully, freely, or safely. That's why today's story matters. This isn't just a crime, it's a reflection of the violence our community still faces. So if you care about truth, justice, and giving voice to those who no longer have one, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Today's case isn't just another story. It's a wound that still aches in the heart of Spain, and for LGBTQ+ people everywhere. This is the case of Samuel Luiz Muniz, a 24-year-old nursing assistant in A Coruña, Galicia. On July 3, 2021, Samuel was beaten to death by a mob of people outside a nightclub, chased down the street, punched, kicked, and left unconscious, all while his attackers allegedly shouted homophobic slurs. It was brutal, it was public, it was witnessed, and yet, over 2 years later, justice still hangs in the air. Samuel's death triggered nationwide protests, social media outrage, and political statements. But the deeper you look, the more you realize, the system still struggles to name what this truly was: a hate crime. Let's not start with his death. Let's start with his life. Samuel Luiz Muniz was born in 1997 in Brazil to a Brazilian father and Spanish mother. He moved to Spain when he was a child, growing up in the beautiful coastal city of A Coruña, in the northwestern region of Galicia. He was raised between two cultures, Brazilian and Galician, and spoke both Portuguese and Spanish fluently. His upbringing was described as humble but joyful. He grew up in a religious household and maintained his Catholic faith into adulthood, even as he came to terms with being gay. Samuel wasn't the loudest voice in the room. He wasn't a high-profile activist. But what made him extraordinary was his warmth, his empathy, and his authenticity. He worked at Residencia de Mayores Porta do Camino, a nursing home in A Coruña, where he was beloved by patients and colleagues. He was also studying dental hygiene, determined to keep building a career in healthcare. He loved learning. He loved music, pop, Brazilian classics, and old-school reggaeton. He had a subtle sense of fashion. And according to friends, he always asked how others were doing, even on his worst days. One friend said, "He didn't deserve to die. Not him, not like that. He was the kind of person who made others feel like everything would be okay." It was a warm summer night. Samuel and his best friend Vanessa Gonzalez had gone out for drinks and dancing near Playa de Riazor, a popular nightlife spot along the coast. Around 2:45 a.m., they stepped outside the club to get some air. Samuel pulled out his phone to make a video call to another friend. A simple, innocent act, a casual video chat. But nearby, a group of young people misinterpreted what Samuel was doing. They believed he was filming them, and that misunderstanding, or that excuse, sparked a horrific sequence of events. Diego M., a 24-year-old man, approached Samuel aggressively. According to witnesses, he shouted,
"Deja de grabarnos, maricón."
Before Samuel could respond or explain, Diego punched him in the face. Vanessa screamed for help. She tried to step in, but chaos unfolded rapidly. Samuel, injured and shocked, tried to run away. But that was just the beginning. Within minutes, Diego returned with more people. A group of at least 7 to 12 individuals began chasing Samuel down the street, cornering him, and beating him to the ground. He was kicked repeatedly in the head and chest. He suffered multiple skull fractures, brain trauma, and internal injuries. Paramedics arrived quickly. Samuel was still alive, but unconscious. He was rushed to Hospital Universitario A Coruña, where he died at 8 a.m. He was 24 years old. Over the next few days, 7 suspects were arrested. Let's look at them closely. Diego M., 24 years old, the primary aggressor, known in local circles for previous violent behavior. Some reports describe him as short-tempered, with a record of bar fights. He claimed that Samuel was filming him without consent, but never explained the use of a homophobic slur. Ko and Yumba, both young men in their early 20s, with no previous criminal records, allegedly joined the second wave of the attack. 2 young women, friends of the suspects, were accused of encouraging the violence and preventing Samuel from escaping. 2 minors were later questioned, though their identities have been sealed due to age. What do we know about these people? They weren't members of a hate group, they weren't political extremists. But that's what makes this scarier. These were ordinary young adults, who didn't hesitate to gang up on someone over a false assumption, and possibly, over homophobia they'd internalized for years. In the immediate aftermath, police hesitated to label the attack a hate crime. Authorities initially stated the incident may not have been motivated by Samuel's sexual orientation, describing it instead as a violent dispute. But that didn't match the evidence. Multiple eyewitnesses heard slurs being used before and during the beating. One said the word
Maricón
was repeated several times. Another said the group was laughing afterward, as if proud of what they'd done. Under Spanish law, for a crime to be classified as a hate crime, bias must be a significant motivating factor. That bar is often too high, and allows prosecutors to sidestep the implications of LGBTQ+ bias. Spanish queer organizations, like Fundación Triángulo, COGM, and Observatory contra el Homofobia, immediately demanded the case be treated as homicidio con agravante de odio, murder with hate crime enhancement. The response was historic. Within 48 hours of Samuel's death, tens of thousands of people gathered in over 70 cities and towns across Spain. Madrid, Barcelona, Seville, Bilbao, Valencia, A Coruña, his hometown. People held signs.
Justicia para Samuel. Nos están matando.
They are killing us.
No fue una pelea. Fue un asesinato homófobo.
It wasn't a fight, it was a homophobic murder. Pride flags flooded the streets. Candlelight vigils were held across Europe, from Paris to Berlin to Lisbon. Politicians weighed in. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez called it a savage and cruel act and pledged full support for the investigation. Minister of Equality Irene Montero was among the first officials to call it a hate crime, tweeting, "Samuel did not die, they killed him, and it was because he was gay." But for many queer people in Spain, words were not enough. In the months that followed, the case dragged on. Diego M. and others were formally charged with intentional homicide, but the hate crime designation remained contested. Prosecutors said they couldn't conclusively prove motive. This ignited debate across legal and activist circles. How many slurs does someone have to yell before a murder is considered a hate crime? Over 2 years later, as of 2025, the trial is ongoing. Samuel's family, especially his father, have repeatedly called for public support and accountability. They've spoken little to the press, choosing dignity over spectacle, but their pain is clear. Spain's LGBTQ+ groups have kept the pressure on. They're calling for stronger legal definitions of hate crimes, quicker police response protocols, mandatory bias training for prosecutors and judges. Samuel's murder wasn't just about one man. It was a mirror to Spain, and to all of us. Spain is often praised for its LGBTQ+ protections, same-sex marriage since 2005, anti-discrimination laws, state-sponsored pride events. But laws alone don't eliminate prejudice. In 2021, Spain recorded more than 1,600 hate crimes, and LGBTQ+ people were the most targeted group. Most victims don't even report the attacks, because they fear disbelief, humiliation, or inaction. Samuel's death exposed that contradiction. It showed that while Spain celebrates queer joy on the streets during Pride, queer safety still isn't guaranteed at 3 a.m. outside a club. So why do I tell these stories? Because they're not just sad tales. They're warnings, they're catalysts, they're memorials. Samuel Luiz deserved to live. He deserved to grow old, to love freely, to walk home safely at night. And in honoring his story, We protect the lives of others who are still here, still vulnerable. What can you do? Support organizations like Foundation Triangulo and Cogum. Talk to your friends about bias, even the subtle kind. Call out homophobia when you hear it, even in jokes. Share Samuel's story, don't let it fade. And most of all, don't look away. Let's open the conversation in the comments. Do you think Spain is doing enough? What does justice mean in a case like this? Comment below. Let's keep talking, keep fighting, keep remembering. This has been LGBT Crime Files. Until next time, stay loud, stay visible, stay safe. Justice for Samuel. Justice for all.